Dr. Neal Lester is a professor of English at Arizona State University and the director of Project Humanities. And joining me now to tell us more about it and their upcoming hackathon. Thanks for joining us this morning. Let's start with what Project Humanities is all about.
Yes. Project Humanities started in 2010 as an effort to promote humanities at a time, especially the economic downturn, when folks are fleeing from humanities disciplines, higher education. So colleges were canceling language courses, and that question that many of us who are humanities majors, history, language, English, have said, what are you going to do with that? Mm-hmm. So I was charged by the ASU president to make humanities more robust, and I chose to go the public humanities route, which is how could we bring individuals and communities together to do humanities. Rather than focusing on disciplines, let's focus on what it means to be human, but also how are we human. And so we created a series of public programs, events, activities to sort of focus on talking, listening, connecting. And that became the essence of humanities, which I'm not the first person to say is about human ties, the ways in which we connect to and with each other.
And so how are you doing that now? How has the program evolved since then?
Well, the program has evolved in the sense that it's growing and it's gotten more kinds of support, but also more kinds of people coming to our program. So I think in many ways it's evolved in the sense that not only do we have people who continue to come, but we're also growing our network of people who are interested in participating in what we're doing, but also in collaborating with us. So when we talk about bringing, new kinds of programs to the Valley, but also beyond, such as the hackathon, then we're able to sort of attract attention from folks that we haven't always been able to attract attention from, particularly corporate types. So it's easy to imagine that when one does humanities that we're talking to the choir. And one of the things that I've always tried to say when somebody threw that metaphor is that if you've been in a choir, then you know that not all members practice. And there's a reason that one has to go to choir practice every week, and that you learn new songs, and that sometimes singers, no matter how much they practice, are still not quite hitting the right note. So that's what I like to think when we're talking about humanities. And if we have to have a graphic, you'll see the hand on some of the collateral that I brought you. It means that we can be as separate as the fingers, yet one is the hand. And that's in essence how we talk about humanities in a way that doesn't distance people. Oftentimes, it is hard for people to put their hands on humanities because you can't touch it. Science you can touch, technology you can touch, even arts you can touch. And arts has managed to squeeze its way into STEM so that we have STEAM, but humanities feels like it's that silent H. And we are trying to make the silent H a little louder. And we do that in all kinds of film screenings, workshops, performances, but every single one is under this umbrella of talking, listening, connecting. So we can be as separate as the fingers, yet one is the hand. So it really is about choice.
So I think you just answered my next question then in saying that it's about talking, listening, and connecting. Would you say that is the purpose?
That is the purpose. And we do it in as many ways we can. And we see that as fundamentally connected or underpinning so much of what's going on in the world that leaves people disconnected or disenfranchised or at a loss when we ask that question, are we losing our humanity? And nobody exists on an island. I do work in privilege and bias that shows that this whole notion of a bootstrap theory is an illusion, that no one who is successful has ever been successful without the help or support of someone else.
Right.
And so in many ways, that embodies the essence of what I see and we've come to promote as what humanities is.
So tell me about Humanity 101 and the hackathon.
Well, Humanity 101 is not a class, but it's sort of a play on if you were starting a course of study, you'd have to take the intro course. Humanity 101 we look as also as the foundation. So it is a series of 7 principles, and they are compassion, empathy, forgiveness, integrity, kindness, respect, and self-reflection. We have built programming consistently for the last several years around these principles. And that does not mean that these are necessarily faith-based, but rather faith and humankind-based. And so, we'll have workshops on forgiveness. I do work on the N-word, and I talk about how understanding language and the connections between language and performance is ultimately about connecting with some of these values, understanding how it feels to respect what you don't understand. So there are ways in which this becomes the way to thread all this together, but also a way that doesn't become exclusive, but rather can be inclusive. Everybody knows something about these principles. We don't have to go out and teach them. What we have to ask people to do is to be mindful of them.
And so one of the ways that you do that is with Humanity 101 in Action, which is your homeless outreach, which we'll talk about in a little while here. But how else do you demonstrate that?
Well, we teach by doing. And, that's a practice that I have come to find most effective is, before we were able to name feminism, it had to be done. Before we could name what privilege is, for example, in my Privilege and Bias workshops, we do it. And I say, for example, we're going to do this workshop on privilege, and I'm wondering if you can tell me how I've demonstrated privilege just in introducing it in that first sentence. And people will say, well, you've got a degree and you were invited to do this workshop. And I say, well, that's certainly the privilege you can see. The privilege I'm talking about is a privilege that we can't see. So the notion that you heard me is a privilege. The fact that you can see me is a privilege. You didn't do anything to earn that. That's the privilege we talk about, is the unearned stuff. So I don't say, well, here's a definition of privilege and let me show you how it plays out, but rather we do it and then we name it.
So you're having some seriously deep conversations there.
It's deep,
That's
but you know what?
awesome.
It shifts the conversation from diversity because diversity has become such a baggage-laden word and can equally have people tune out. But if we look at these principles of humanity, we're talking about our individual humanity as well as our shared humanity. And that self-reflection is about all of us. So I blur that in with this notion of bias, how we all come to the table with something and that we're not even aware of how much we operate on the basis of filling in stuff that really isn't before us.
So it's like seeing the world through your own filter based on your past experiences, which then brings about stereotypes, for example.
That's denying individuals their humanity because we're not respecting the present, but looking always at something in the past that's familiar to us.
Yeah.
And we will never discover each other and ourselves if we're continually holding on to those things that lock us into a past.
Well, there's so much we can talk about when it comes to this conversation, but because we are so limited on time today, I do want to talk about the hackathon that you have coming up. Tell me more about that.
Well, the hackathon is a fairly familiar concept for those who are in technology. And that's been our challenge because if we were in engineering or computers, we'd send out and people would say, yes, of course you know what hackathon is. But for those who are not in that arena regularly, then hackathon conjures up negativity, breaking into things. Well, technically hackathon, as I've learned, is about building something. Now you can build something to break into something, but it's ultimately about building. So what we are calling this is the hackathon, Hacks for Humanity for the Social Good. So we're saying that we can come in and build technologies, not just an app, can be a website or a video game that's towards something that is bigger than ourselves, that leads to something that we want to call social good. And what's different about this is that our target audience is everyone, so that we are not necessarily just looking for people who code, because that's not the whole 36 hours. This is about networking. It's about collaborating. It's about talking to people that you wouldn't necessarily talk to every day because we don't have teams come in prepackaged. You do this all organically based on how you register. So people will register as designers. They'll register as humanists, as entrepreneurs, as artists. And then based on how they've registered, that's what they'll be expected to form teams around. And the idea is, how do you, for 36 hours, build a technology that has 3 of these 7 principles? Because that's where the challenge is. We're not asking you to go out and build a technology to help you find your car in a parking structure. We know how important that is, but that's not necessarily the same as what came out of our very first hackathon in 2014 was a technology that allowed the filtering of self-harm/suicide tweets so that trained professionals could reach out to the person who was sending that tweet. And this is all within 36 hours. So this is nothing that some organization brought to us and said, would you please solve this problem? Because that's part of the challenge, is to find 3 to 5 people with whom you can work, and you decide what the problem is within the parameters that we give you. Another was it created a technology that allows parents with children who have ADHD to communicate with those children. In the past, that was something that only professionals could do.
It's incredible what you can accomplish in those 36 hours, especially when in some cases many of the participants have probably never even met. And this is an annual event?
It is an annual event. This is our
It's coming
5th.
up in October.
It's October 6th and 7th. It's a Saturday and a Sunday. And what I like to remind people is that you don't just walk into the door and then you start working on a technology. We have workshops, we have opening sessions, there are icebreakers, there are community building activities so you get to know people. This is organically trying, as someone just said before I came here, is you're creating new communities and new neighborhoods through this mechanism that we call disruptive innovation. There will be lots of catered food. There will be lots of opportunities for people to network, collaborate. But there's also fun, though. At midnight, we have a pizza line dance party. Last year, we had a silent disco at midnight. And in the morning, we have Rise and Shine Yoga, which is Sunday morning. And then we have therapy dogs coming in. But it really is a lot of fun, and it's really something that's different from hackathons that people, in Silicon Valley or MIT are used to having, because we're building it around humanity. And oftentimes we can build technology and not quite figure out how is it supposed to advance humanity.
So who is this open to?
Everybody in the same.
So not just designers, not just coders.
Absolutely. In the same way that we talk the mentors. If you can't come and stay for 36 hours, then you can also mentor for a couple of hours. And we want the diversity among mentors as we do among participants. You come there because you have something to contribute, and everybody has something to contribute. If we talk about true community as I see it is when each person brings something new to the table that isn't already there, and that you create something new based on what each person brings to the table.
And how can people sign up for this?
They can sign up by going to our website, which is hacks, HACKS, for humanity.io, or you can go to the Project Humanities website at arizonastateuniversity.edu.
All right, there's still so much more to cover, so I want to give you a chance to touch on donation and volunteer opportunities through your homeless outreach. You want to talk about that?
Yes, I do things as an English teacher thematically. So Humanity 101 is sort of woven through all of what we're doing. So, we can have the technology and the business and all of that in the hackathon, but we also know that everybody's not into hackathons and would not want that experience. But our homeless outreach, we call Saturday Service. We've done that for 5 years. It started off as a spontaneous day, and now it has become for the 5 years, every other Saturday, downtown Phoenix, 12th Avenue, between Jefferson and Madison, 150 to 200 adults experiencing homelessness. We distribute clothing, shoes, and toiletries. And it has been amazing that this, to me, has become a Humanity 101 in action, so that we're not just talking about this, but we're actually talking to people that we don't normally talk to. What has happened over the 5 years, though, is we've also created community there and witnessed community there. And this intergenerational, we've had Boy Scouts there, retirees there, we've had visiting faculty from other countries come, because this too is America.
And again, this is also open to everyone in the community, right?
All of what we're doing is open to the public. And I do want to know that Project Humanities is a year-round initiative. It's award-winning. The awards are important in the sense that other people are paying attention to what we have, but everybody's welcome to this. These are all free events, and everybody's welcome to them. And I guarantee that once you go to an event, there's something that you'll be able to take back. It's unlike anything else that I've witnessed in the 30 years that I've been in academia, where you can bring people together to talk, listen, and connect respectfully and around topics that really matter.
And tell me again how people can learn more about this.
By going to our website, Project Humanities at asu.edu. We can go under events. You can also look under initiatives. You can look at the about. You can look at what people have said about us. You can look at the accolades and recognitions we've had. But you can also see what we've got coming up this semester. We do anywhere from 8 to 12 events per semester, everything from film screenings to workshops to performances to this hackathon. So there's a range of stuff.
Well, I think I'm going to have you come back in because, as I said earlier, there's so much to talk about when it comes to this subject. Dr. Neal Lester is the director of Project Humanities at ASU. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.